My beloved child. Something shifted in a moment so quietly that no one around them understood it at first. The room looked the same, the voices around them were still there, the light had not changed, but inside that single second, everything became different. A phone began to ring, and before they answered it, they had no idea that one sentence was about to move their heart in a direction they had tried so hard to resist. Do not skip, because what happened next was not ordinary. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and every word of this moment carries the weight of what they could no longer hide. They looked at the screen before answering. For a brief second, they hesitated, as if they already sensed that this call was carrying something they were not prepared to hear. Their fingers paused. Their breathing changed. Even the expression on their face became unreadable. The people nearby noticed it, but no one asked why. Then they answered. At first, they said almost nothing. Only silence. Only listening. Only those small changes in expression that reveal more than words ever can. Their eyes narrowed, then softened. Their shoulders, which had been tense for so long, slowly dropped as though a truth they had been fighting had suddenly reached them from the other side of the line. And then came the words that changed everything. The voice on that call mentioned you. Not casually. Not lightly. Your name entered that conversation with a force they could not ignore. It arrived like something long delayed, like a truth carried through distance until it finally landed exactly where it needed to. The person speaking told them something they were not expecting to hear, that your presence had remained stronger than they admitted, that the effect you left behind had not faded, and that no matter how much they tried to act normal, something about you continued to return in quiet moments. Do not skip, because they did not expect to hear that from someone else. They thought they were the only one noticing what had changed inside them. The moment your name was spoken, they turned away from everyone near them, as if they suddenly needed privacy for feelings they had kept locked away. Their voice became lower. Their answers became shorter. But inside, 1,000 thoughts had already begun moving. Because what they heard next shook them even more. The caller told them, very clearly, that people around them had already noticed the difference. They had noticed how distracted they became. How certain conversations lost meaning. How certain places reminded them of someone they were trying not to mention. And when they heard that, they could no longer pretend that nothing had changed. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They walked toward a quieter place while still holding the phone, listening carefully now, not wanting to miss a single word. Every sentence seemed to pull another hidden thought into the open. Then came the unexpected line that made them stop completely. They still matter to you more than you admit. Those words landed harder than they expected. Because somewhere deep inside, they already knew it. That is why they stopped walking. That is why their eyes stayed fixed on nothing. That is why even after the caller continued speaking, their thoughts had already gone somewhere else, directly toward the moments they remembered with you, the unfinished conversations, the things never fully explained, the feelings that remained unfinished because timing never gave them the courage they needed. Do not skip now. Because after hearing all of that, they asked one question. Only one. And that question revealed everything they had been hiding. What did they say about me? That question came quietly, but it carried more emotion than anyone there would have guessed. Because people only ask that when the answer matters deeply. And the reply they received did not make them calmer. It made everything stronger. The caller said that what was spoken about you carried no bitterness, no coldness, no rejection, only sincerity, calmness, and a strange warmth that stayed long after your name was mentioned. That shocked them. Because they had prepared themselves for distance. But what they heard instead gave them something dangerous to ignore: hope. And once hope enters a guarded heart, silence becomes difficult. They lowered the phone slightly, almost unable to respond immediately. Their mind began replaying every moment where they had chosen distance instead of honesty, every time they wanted to say more but decided not to. Something huge is waiting for you, because that phone call did not end their thoughts, it began them. Even after the caller finished speaking, they remained there holding the phone, staring ahead, while everyone around them wondered why they suddenly looked as if they had stepped into another world. Because in that moment, they were no longer thinking about today. They were thinking about what happens next. What happens when someone realizes that what they tried to bury is still alive? What happens when one unexpected conversation forces them to admit that your place inside their heart was never truly replaced? And what happened after that silence was even more surprising. They whispered something so softly that almost no one nearby could hear it. But if you had been standing there, you would have understood immediately why everything changed. They said, "So that means I was wrong." That sentence did not come from confusion. It came from realization. A realization that maybe they misunderstood your silence. Maybe they misunderstood your distance. Maybe they misunderstood what remained between both of you. Do not skip, because the next moment became even deeper. They did not return immediately to the people around them. Instead, they stayed still, reading old thoughts inside their own mind, as if trying to connect every unfinished detail they had ignored until now. And for the first time in a long while, they were not running from what they felt. They were standing inside it. The phone call had ended. But inside them, something had just begun. And tonight, even if they say nothing aloud, your name will return to them again, not as a passing thought, but as the center of a question they can no longer avoid. Why did hearing about you change everything so fast? Because some truths arrive late, but when they arrive, they do not knock softly. They enter and stay. Stay till the end, because this is only the beginning. What happened after that silence was even harder for them to explain, because once the call ended, they did not return to normal conversation the way everyone expected. They held the phone in their hand for several seconds longer, staring at the screen as though another message might appear, as though one more word could suddenly explain why their heart had become so restless. Do not skip. Because the next few moments carried something they could not hide. Someone nearby asked them a simple question, but they barely heard it. Their thoughts were already somewhere else, replaying every sentence from that call, especially the part where your name was spoken with unexpected certainty, with a tone that made it impossible to dismiss. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They slowly sat down, but even sitting still did not calm what had begun inside them. Their fingers tapped lightly against the edge of the phone, not out of habit, but because their mind was racing through memories they thought had lost their power. A small detail returned first. A moment they once ignored. A sentence you said long ago that did not seem important then, but now suddenly sounded different in their memory, clearer, deeper, almost as if it had been waiting for this exact day to make sense. And that is when they realized the phone call had not only reminded them of you. It had opened something unfinished. The caller had said one more thing before hanging up, and that final sentence kept repeating inside them. They never truly closed that door. That line stayed with them. Because until that second, they had convinced themselves that distance meant ending, silence meant forgetting, and time meant feelings had weakened. But now those assumptions no longer felt solid. Do not skip, because this changed the way they looked at everything. They opened old conversations in their mind without touching the phone again. They remembered certain pauses, certain looks, certain unfinished moments where words almost became honesty but stopped too early. And suddenly they asked themselves something they had avoided for a very long time. What if I misunderstood everything? That question did not arrive lightly. It arrived with force. Because once someone begins questioning what they believed, every memory starts speaking differently. Something huge is waiting for you. A few minutes later, another person in the room noticed the change and asked why they had become so quiet. They answered with only a short sentence. I just heard something unexpected. But even that answer was incomplete, because what they heard was not merely unexpected, it felt like hearing a hidden truth spoken aloud after too much silence. The strongest part came next. Without planning it, they opened their phone again. Not to call. Not to send anything. Just to look. And the name they searched first was yours. For a few seconds, they simply stared, as though deciding whether they had the courage to cross the distance that pride had protected for too long. Do not skip now, because this hesitation meant more than words. Their thumb moved once, then stopped. A message almost began. Then disappeared. Another attempt started. Then stopped again. Because sometimes the hardest thing is not feeling deeply, it is deciding whether to reveal that feeling after pretending for so long that it no longer matters. Stay till the end. Because what happened inside them next was stronger than anything spoken aloud. They remembered the exact tone from the phone call when your name was mentioned. There had been certainty in that voice, not doubt. A calm certainty that suggested your place in this story was still far from finished. And suddenly they understood why that call shook them so deeply. It was not because someone mentioned you. It was because someone confirmed what they had been trying not to admit. That your presence still changes their inner world faster than anything else. Even now. Even after all the silence. Even after all the effort to appear unaffected. Something huge is waiting for you. The room around them became noise they could no longer focus on. Conversations continued, people moved, ordinary things happened, but none of it entered their mind. Their attention stayed trapped inside one thought. Why did hearing your name feel like hearing something they had been waiting for without knowing it? Then came the most surprising moment. They smiled very slightly. A smile no one expected, because only minutes earlier they had looked completely unsettled. That smile came from one private realization. Not everything had disappeared. Not everything had ended. Some connections do not announce themselves loudly. They survive quietly, then return with force when one unexpected moment gives them space again. Do not skip, because they then whispered another sentence almost too softly to hear. I need to think. But what they really meant was this. I need to understand why this still matters so much. And the truth is, they already knew. Because if it did not matter, your name would not still carry this power. If it did not matter, one phone call would not have changed the direction of their entire evening. If it did not matter, they would not still be sitting there wondering whether the next move should finally be different. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The night around them continued, but inside, something had shifted permanently. The phone call ended. The voice disappeared. But the meaning remained. And now, without telling anyone, they are carrying one silent thought stronger than before. What? If the story between you is not finished yet, and this was the first sign they were meant to stop pretending otherwise? A few moments later, the silence around them became heavier than before, because now they were no longer only thinking, they were comparing everything they had felt before that phone call with everything they felt after it, and the difference was impossible to ignore. Do not skip. Because this was the exact moment when they understood that something inside them had already changed. They leaned back slowly, holding the phone again, not because they expected another call, but because that device had suddenly become connected to the one conversation they could not stop replaying. Every sentence returned in fragments. Every pause in that call now sounded meaningful. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The strongest detail kept returning. The tone used when your name was spoken. It was calm, clear, and certain, almost as if the person on the other side already knew that hearing about you would create this exact reaction. And it did. Because now they were remembering not only the obvious moments, but the tiny details they once dismissed. A look they gave when nobody noticed. A conversation they ended too quickly. A message they almost sent but erased. A day they acted distant even though their thoughts were completely elsewhere. Those small memories returned one by one, and together they formed something impossible to deny. What they felt had never fully disappeared. Do not skip, because they suddenly stood up again as though sitting still had become impossible. The room around them noticed the movement, but nobody understood why they were now walking slowly, almost like someone carrying a private storm hidden behind a calm face. Inside, however, one question had become louder than all others. Why now? Why did one phone call bring everything back with such force? And the answer began forming almost immediately. Because sometimes the heart stays quiet until someone else speaks the truth it has been avoiding. Something huge is waiting for you. They stopped near a window, looked outside, and for several seconds said nothing at all. It was not hesitation anymore. It was reflection. Deep, quiet reflection that happens when a person realizes they may have spent too much time pretending to be unaffected. Then another memory returned. A sentence you once said that they did not fully understand at the time. Back then, they let it pass. Now, suddenly, it sounded powerful. Because after this call, even ordinary memories carried new meaning. Stay till the end. Their hand moved again across the phone screen, this time not searching randomly. They opened old details connected to you, not to send anything yet, but simply because they wanted proof that what they were feeling had reason behind it. And every small reminder only made the silence inside them louder. The truth was becoming impossible to escape. That phone call had not planted new feelings. It had uncovered feelings already there. Do not skip now, because the next realization came unexpectedly. They noticed that while everyone else around them continued their evening normally, they had completely lost interest in every ordinary conversation. Nothing around them felt important enough anymore because one thought had taken all space. What if they had waited too long to admit what still mattered? That thought stayed. And with it came another line from the call, one they had almost forgotten but now remembered perfectly. Sometimes what is unfinished speaks louder than what is complete. That sentence changed everything again. Because suddenly they understood why your name carried such unusual weight tonight. Not because of the past alone, but because part of them still believed something remained unwritten. Something huge is waiting for you. For the first time that day, they smiled and then immediately became serious again, because even that smile surprised them. It came from a place they had tried not to revisit. And now they could not stop asking themselves. If hearing about you causes this much emotion, then what happens if real words return? What happens if silence breaks? What happens if honesty arrives after delay? Stay till the end, because these thoughts did not fade, they grew stronger. A message box opened again. This time they wrote more than before. Then paused. Read it. Deleted part of it. Started again. Not because they lacked words, but because too many words suddenly existed, and choosing the right one felt impossible. Do not skip, because even unfinished words reveal what matters most. The strongest truth now stood directly in front of them. They were no longer pretending that this call meant nothing. They were no longer pretending your name had no effect. And they were no longer pretending that the unexpected words spoken about you had not reached the deepest part of what they kept hidden. That is why they remained there, phone in hand, while time moved quietly around them. Because some moments do not look dramatic from the outside, yet inside they rewrite everything. And tonight had become exactly that kind of moment. Something huge is waiting for you. Before putting the phone down again, they whispered one sentence only to themselves. Maybe this was meant to happen today. Not because they suddenly understood every answer, but because for the first time in a long while, they stopped resisting the possibility that hearing about you was not accidental. It arrived exactly when their heart was no longer strong enough to deny what still remained. And now one thought follows them more closely than anything else. If one unexpected call changed this much, what happens when the next sign appears? Then came the part they never expected. The quiet after all those thoughts became even louder than the phone call itself. Nothing around them had changed outwardly, yet inside, every feeling had become impossible to arrange neatly again. It was as if one conversation had opened a door they had kept closed for far too long, and now that door refused to shut. Do not skip, because what happened next was the moment they stopped pretending this was ordinary. They looked at the screen once more, but this time they were not searching for old details. They were waiting, almost hoping that something else would appear. Another sign, another word, another reason to explain why your name had suddenly become the center of their entire attention. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. A message arrived, but it was not from who they expected. It was short, simple, and unrelated to what they were feeling, yet even that ordinary message made them realize something surprising. They had no interest in replying to anyone else. Because their mind had gone somewhere else completely. Your name had changed the direction of their evening so strongly that everything ordinary now felt distant. They walked slowly again, this time with more certainty, as if moving helped them understand what sitting still could not explain. Every step seemed connected to one growing realization. The phone call did not simply remind them of you. It forced them to confront what they had carefully avoided. Do not skip, because this realization became stronger with every second. They remembered how quickly their heartbeat changed when they first heard your name during that call. At that moment they thought it was surprise. Now they understood it was recognition, recognition of something unfinished that still carried meaning. And then one sentence from the caller returned again, clearer than before. They spoke about you with more warmth than you imagine. That line stayed. Because warmth changes everything. Warmth means memory is still alive. Warmth means distance has not erased meaning. Warmth means silence may not mean what they once assumed. Something huge is waiting for you. For the first time that night, they admitted privately that hearing this had created hope they did not know how to manage. Not loud hope. Not dramatic hope. Quiet hope, the kind that enters gently but refuses to leave. And that quiet hope became dangerous for someone who had trained themselves to expect nothing. Stay till the end. They opened the message box again. This time no words were typed immediately. Instead, they stared at the blank space, because suddenly every possible beginning felt too small for what they actually wanted to say. How do you begin after so much silence? How do you write one line when the truth behind it has been waiting for so long? Do not skip now, because even their hesitation had meaning. They placed the phone down. Picked it up again. Locked the screen. Unlocked it again. That simple movement revealed more than speech could. Because only someone deeply affected repeats that kind of hesitation. And then came the strongest thought of all. What if this call happened exactly when it needed to? That thought remained. Because timing suddenly felt important. Why today? Why this exact moment? Why after all this time did someone choose to speak words that reopened everything? Something huge is waiting for you. They began remembering details they had not thought about in a long time, not dramatic moments, but quiet ones. Small pauses. Half-finished conversations. Tiny moments where emotion existed but never became language. And now those quiet memories felt louder than anything happening around them. Even the room they stood in seemed distant. The people nearby seemed blurred. Because internally, one truth had taken full shape. You still carried a place they had never fully removed. Do not skip. Because once that truth becomes clear, a person cannot easily return to pretending. They finally typed a few words. Read them carefully. Paused again. The words were simple, but even simple words felt heavy when they carried real meaning. Then they deleted them once more, not because they changed their mind, but because they wanted the first line to be right. That alone revealed how deeply this moment mattered. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Their expression softened in a way no one around them understood. If someone had asked what changed, they would not have had an easy answer. Because how do you explain that one phone call can quietly shift the way you see an unfinished story? How do you explain that hearing unexpected words about one person suddenly makes every hidden feeling impossible to ignore? And then they whispered one final sentence, almost like admitting it for the first time. I thought I had moved past this. But the truth in that sentence was incomplete. Because what they really discovered tonight was this. They had not moved past it. They had only learned how to stay silent around it. And now silence no longer felt strong enough. Something huge is waiting for you. The phone remained in their hand. The message remained unfinished. But the heart behind both had already changed. Because after tonight, they can no longer say your name means nothing. They can no longer claim that hearing about you leaves them unchanged. And somewhere inside, a quiet certainty has begun growing. The next move may arrive sooner than anyone expects, because some truths become impossible to delay once they are finally spoken aloud inside the heart.